This presentation is going to review POP3 and SMTP for Windows Server 2012 R2 and the Ubuntu Server 16.4.1 LTS for ISA 4220, Professor Green's class, Spring Semester 2017. Alrighty, I'm first going to address some technical details in regards to POP3 and SMTP. POP3 is the acronym for Post Office Protocol 3. The Post Office Protocol is utilized by email clients to receive emails from a remote server. Basically, POP allows for those emails to be stored until the client is ready to pull them down for download. A POP server versus the internet POP servers. POP servers are used in corporations. Multiple POP servers may be used to store personnel email mailboxes, whereas only one server may be used for a smaller company to store all all employee email mailboxes. Internet POP servers allow email transactions to take place between users all around the world. It works in sync with SMTP by moving messages between mail servers. POP3 also runs on the application layer of the OSI model. SMTP is an acronym for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. SMTP is a message transfer manager for the client email system that transfers messages from the client system to the server. As everyone knows, you must press send to send an email. This is how the client system conveys that the email is ready to go to the Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. The protocol is implemented between two email servers, allowing them to transfer emails between one another. SMTP uses the client's email address to direct their email to its actual destination. Without email addresses, SMTP would not be able to function. Due to SMTP, reliability and ability to sequence and acknowledge it runs on top of the transmission control protocol. SMTP also runs on top of the application layer of the OSI model. Okay, now I'm going to go over POP3 and SMTP, a little bit more technical in regards to an Exchange server for POP3 and Windows IIS for SMTP. Before POP3 is set up, the Exchange server must be installed and properly configured. Once the Exchange server is installed and configured, the POP3 server can then be configured. Port 110 is a non-encrypted port, whereas in port 995 is an encrypted and more secure port. 995 is used to ensure secure POP3 transmissions between both clients and server. Port 110 is not as secure and is not commonly used when it comes to email transmissions that are needed to be secured. Port 995 uses the secure sockets layer along with the transport security layer to securely transport POP3 traffic. Windows IIS for SMTP. The IIS manager will make the SMTP configuration process easier. The manager allows for the user to choose whether or not they want their emails delivered directly to them or if they want their emails to be stored on a separate server. Port 25 is the non-encrypted port for SMTP, that is the default setting. Port 2525 is used if port 25 is filtered and you want to continue to transmit non-encrypted emails utilizing SMTP. Port 465 is used when the user wants to send encrypted emails using SMTP, further securing all transmissions. Okay, I'm going to review now POP3 and SMTP on the Windows Exchange server. On a technical aspect, the Windows Exchange server only runs on Windows OS. It utilizes the transport pipeline, and this is where electronic mail transfer actually takes place. All components, services, queues, and connections used to route the messages are collected and transported through this pipeline. The transport pipeline consists of four main services: front-end transport for client access servers, mailbox server transport server, mailbox server, mailbox transport, which includes submission and delivery, and then edge transport servers, transport service. As you can see, I have a little diagram over here that kind of spells out how the transfer pipeline works and how everything kind of just flows through it. All right, now I'm going to review POP3 and SMTP. POP3 for the Exchange server and Windows IIS for SMTP. For the Exchange server hardening tactics, you're going to want to utilize Windows Best Practices Analyzer to help diagnose any potential weakness regarding your Exchange server. The Best Practices Analyzer will diagnose the problem so that it may not go unseen. Your next step is you're going to want to get to know your system. So if by any chance it is compromised, you are able to already know what's going on in there as far as all your backup files, and you're able to jump on and implement a quick, efficient system recovery. You're always going to want to keep the server up to date by installing all available packages. I believe this has gone for all hardening recommendations across the board, what we've researched and reported on thus far. You want to configure the Exchange server to block all unsolicited emails to further protect your system. You want to also implement and utilize those filtering services. You're also going to want to enable spam protection to deter against viruses and DOS and DDoS attacks. For Windows SMTP hardening for the Windows IIS, authentication allows you to choose from 3 different methods so that the user can control who's attempting to connect with the SMTP server. Those 3 connections are anonymous access, those 3 authentications are anonymous access, basic authentication, and integrated Windows authentication. For anonymous access, this actually allows for someone to connect without the use of a username or password. This allows for the server to accept email transmissions from outside of the network without having to implement these the credentials for username and password. For basic authentication, usernames and passwords are required to access the server. This information is unfortunately transmitted throughout the network without encryption, leaving your credentials out there very easy for an attacker to read and obtain. We want to implement TLS encryption whenever you're using basic authentication, because if you select this when configuring your basic authentication, it will make sure it implements the encryption of all your credentials, therefore protecting your credentials so a man-in-the-middle attacker can't kind of come in there and take your stuff and log into your banking account or whatever else you're accessing. Integrated Windows authentication enforces the use of a valid Windows username and password, and it is absolutely imperative for integrated Windows authentication to use this for access to the SMTP server, for the user to have access to the SMTP server connection. Next is going to be the certificate of communication. The user can secure all SMTP communications by implementing encryption and installing security certificates. Connection. This option allows the user to restrict access to the server. And this is done by specifying which IP addresses are allowed and which IP addresses are not allowed to contact the SMTP server. The relay option sends the email to an SMTP server and then sends it over to another SMTP relay server or a destination server. Next is limit. You want to limit your admin access or administrator access. Restrict this only to trusted, verified admins. You want to set message limits also. Set the message size and session limits to prevent them from affecting your server performance. Now I'm going to go over POP3 for the Dovecote server. Dovecode is an open source email server that is used for Linux and Unix-based operating systems. The Dovecode email server supports both POP3 and IMAP email protocols that control incoming email transmissions. Dovecode really focuses on the presence of security in its email service, and it also stays compliant with all regulations that are expected of this service. This program is also a self-resolving program. If it detects a problem, it can sort it out on its own and fix it on its own without a user having to go in and interject. This saves a lot of time for a lot of businesses and for personal people on a personal level as well, not having to go in and fix every single problem that arises. Dovecode is also an admin-friendly program. It's admin friendly by displaying easy to read and follow error messages. I don't know about you guys, but I know I've gotten error messages on my computer that I'm completely lost on. This program can be installed and used on a small or a large scale. There are also 4 main processes that Dovecode runs. That is the master process, the login process, authentication process, and mail process. For the master process, this process makes sure that all processes are running efficiently and successfully. For the login process, this makes sure that all minimum requirements for POP3 are met for POP3 to be able to run. For the authentication process, this makes sure that all user credentials and passwords are up to par. And also, last but not least, is the mail process. It basically is the post-login email management system. All right, for SMTP on the Linux server or the Ubuntu 16.04.1 LTS, postfix is actually what is utilized to run this service. On a technical aspect, postfix runs on Mac OS X, Unix, Linux, and a multitude of other Linux-based systems. It requires ANSIC, it requires postfix.1 library, and BSD sockets for it to run. It offers a multitude of items, which is junk mail control, protocol support, database support, mailbox support, address manipulation, relay control, pre-user policies, SMTP restrictions, and SMTP access rule testing. All right, hardening recommendations for POP3 and SMTP on both the Dovecode and postfix. For Dovecode, or running the POP3, OpenSSL and Dovecode must be installed and up to date at all times. You'll also want to enable the secure sockets layer to further protect all transmissions. You'll also want to configure all available ciphers as well. For postfix on an SMTP level, you're going to want to make sure you also have an OpenSSL there, and postfix must be installed and kept up to date at all times, both programs, OpenSSL and postfix. DH parameters is known as Diffie-Hellman key exchange. This is an algorithm that allows for cryptographic keys to be exchanged in a symmetric encryption algorithm. Once these parameters are set, encrypted email transmissions can then be processed. Last but not least, you'll want to make sure that all SSL settings are active and up to date.